Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander is underwritten by Task Performance.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovich family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Well, here's the bottom line. Funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening, and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and I cannot wait once again for this show tonight. One of my all-time favorite athletes will be on it. But right now, before we get to Durand, Rudy, Macklin, let's talk football, because during the dog days of summer with 115 heat indexes, football is finally upon us, and training camp gets underway this week. The Saints, well, they start Thursday, and Wednesday night they have the annual Sean Payton interviews, the media, the press conference with Mickey Loomis and all. But it's going to be open to the public finally on Saturday. If you don't have your tickets, unfortunately, the first weekend sold out. Go to NewOrleansSaints.com. There's 10 practices you can go to. Some of them are sold out. But looking at the schedule right here, hey, the first preseason game is Thursday, August the 9th at Jacksonville. But here's the regular season, and this is important to take a peek at because Mark Ingram, as you know, won't be playing for the first 4 games. It looks somewhat manageable. The Buccaneers and Browns at home. And then you have the Falcons on the road. That is going to be a very tough game. And then, of course, at the Giants, I expect them to be much improved as well. Then Ingram gets back for the Redskins game. Hey, but lots going on. How about this? The Falcons' new logo. They just came out with one. There it is. Finally a beer that won't leave rings on your table. Go Falcons! That is their new logo. I just kid. And by the way, the Saints, speaking of them, they just signed Shane Vereen, as you probably know if you follow them closely. Former Giant, former Patriot. And he is a guy that will probably be coming out of the backfield if he makes the team. He's going to be in a battle with Terrence West, some veterans. West started the season as a starter in Baltimore last year, and also some young players we will talk about in the upcoming days. But speaking of the Saints, how about this? Listen, Jonathan Vilma, one of the greatest all-time players in Saints history. I think his run was not long, but it was very good. Super Bowl champion, one of the smartest players this team has ever had. Well, he's going to replace Booger McFarland, the former LSU legend, and he's going to go to ABC College Football and be with Mac Brown and Kevin Negandhi. And that's a big gig, halftime, pre-game, and all that post-game stuff. He's going to be fantastic on that. Speaking of media and Saints, Zach Strief, who just retired. He's been on this show just a couple months ago. He was offered the Saints radio gig to replace Jim Henderson as the play-by-play guy. This is kind of like earth-shattering because he's an athlete. They're usually analysts, so we'll see if he takes the job and does that. Hey, let's go back to football and camps. LSU, they start their camp on August 3rd. Tulane is July 31st. Hey, the Raging Cajuns. And you also have, of course, over there, Nicholls State, and they like to be called Nichols now, and then Southeast Louisiana, they all start soon too. Hey, speaking of LSU, Devin White was named the #1 linebacker in the entire country. Hey, that's big shoes to fill there. Hopefully he'll do that. Him and Greedy Williams were first-team All-American picks, preseason, of course. And let's stay with football because Johnny Manziel, how about our boy Johnny? He's the former Texas A&M star. He's the Cleveland Browns bust. Hamilton Tiger, cat bench warmer. Well, he didn't even play a snap in 5 games. He is traded to the Montreal Alouettes for 2 first-rounders. And my, how his star has fallen. And I'd be remiss not to mention and bring up my man Alex Bregman. His home run in the 10th inning of the Major League All-Star game last week, that broke a 5-5 tie. And to help the AL win 8-6 in 10 innings, he was named the MVP in his first ever All-Star game. Hey, in a week and a half, we have the Greater New Orleans Sports Hall of Fame, and that's going to bring some great names, including Tom Benson. He's going to be in there. You see A.J. Dewey right there. He's former LSU star, first-round pick with the Dolphins, went to the Super Bowl with them. And John Forcade, the former Shaw Eagle star, Ole Miss Rebel, and, of course, the Saints. He's going in, as well as Irvin Johnson. Not Magic, but the one that played at UNO and for several NBA teams. And speaking of New Orleans and football, flag football team from New Orleans, the Fighting Cancer team, just a bunch of dudes, good athletes. They beat a team littered with very good former NFL players, and they stomped them 26-6 for $1 million. How about that? Now on to basketball. A trade that sent shockwaves to the NBA. Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green going to the Raptors for DeMar DeRozan, Jacob Poeltl, and the #1 pick. And Carmelo will join CP3 and, of course, James Harden in Houston. And how about our boy Dirk Nowitzki? Dirk Nowitzki just re-signed with the Mavericks. 21 years makes him, that's when he was a baby right there, 21 years makes him the longest consecutive with one team, 21 years with the Dallas Mavericks. He just beat out Kobe Bryant. And moving forward, we have Durand, Rudy, Macklin, and we got all kind of Saints covered. Nick Underhill from The Advocate. Also, Andrew Doak from WLAE-TV coming up next on Primetime Sports.
On the highway in a ghost of glass and steel, I shiver like a banshee at the wheel. Miles to go yet, touch of regret, trouble in my mind. Chase the sunset down behind the Georgia line. I could swing a hammer.
Oh, I always love hearing Aaron Wilkinson. Of course, that is from the Honey Island Swamp Band. And I can't wait for the rest of this show. Hey, later, don't forget, we're going to have Durand, Rudy, Macklin, LSU's all-time leading rebounder, second all-time leading scorer, SEC Player of the Year, and two-time first-team All-American. That's coming up, but this is a Saints show. I haven't talked to a lot of Saints for the last 6 weeks, and I've heard it from you guys on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. But today, with training camp starting this week, we're going to get heavy into it. I have Andrew Doak from WWL later. But right now, the guy that probably has more Twitter followers than anybody that writes about the Saints, and I could be wrong there, but he's got over 20,000. His name is Nick Underhill with The Advocate, and here he is right here. Welcome, buddy.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So good to see you. I think the first time people come on our show, I kind of like to get everybody to get to know them a little bit. And I think your story is pretty fascinating because you came up through the ranks. And from what I understood, you were writing about the Patriots, and then take it from there. But how did this work? You were blogging at first, and then all of a sudden you got a gig with them?
Yeah, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I saw an opportunity actually to cover the Red Sox, spring training freelance a little bit for a newspaper in Massachusetts. And I called them up and I lied and I said, hey, I'm going to be down there. I want to do this. And they said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I flew myself down. I covered the Red Sox, paid for it out of my own pocket, lost thousands of dollars on the venture. Right. But it worked out. They asked me to start blogging about the Patriots, and I was driving to Patriots games from my home in Pennsylvania.
How far is that?
About 9 hours one way.
Yeah. I knew your story was good, but that's beyond good.
Yeah, I mean,
you really wanted it.
You got to make your own luck in this business, and sometimes the opportunities don't come. I was covering golf, swimming, just stupid things in Pennsylvania, and I just wanted a chance. I saw a way to get one, and I was young and dumb enough to think that it could work out, and somehow it did work out. So,
and I remember you came, was it 4 years ago? Mm-hmm. So this is your 5th training camp? And you came, and I just remember, all of a sudden, the Advocate went young. I mean, there was you, and they hired Joel Erickson, I think, after you, and they had some old established guys. So tell me about that, getting this beat job and being the #1 guy over there at a pretty relatively young age.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're lucky at the Advocate too. They hire good people, me, Joel, Ross Stellinger, who's now with Sports Illustrated, and they put us in place and kind of let us do our thing and play to our strengths. And the way I cover the team, a lot of places might not give you the latitude to do it. My editor will call me, hey, what are you doing? And I explain, hey, I'm going to watch 9 seasons of Drew Brees games and write about his out routes. And okay, go ahead. And they let me do that. And I think the fans like the way we kind of cover the team.
They do. And in fact, that's one thing I want to stress to people. If you're not following Nick, just put him in your search, Nick Underhill, because you do get a lot of respect. I see stuff like if Nick Underhill says it, it must be true. So how does that feel? Because you're obviously getting the respect you deserve now.
Well, I mean, I just try to be very careful as a reporter. If I'm breaking a story, my sources got to be good. I don't ever, luckily to this point, I've never been wrong. Someday it's going to happen, but I mean, I think if you're careful and you don't take chances, you got to be willing to let some things go. A few years ago, we knew Champ Bailey got cut, but our sourcing was sketchy, so we just, we let that one go, and it got broke by Adam Schefter or something. But you got to be willing to do that. But when I put my name on something, I want to make sure it's right.
You want to make sure, but isn't it tempting sometimes? I mean,
it is. I mean, sometimes you get a juicy story, but that 15 minutes of fame you get from breaking a story. If you're wrong, that's going to attach to your name, and that's going to last longer.
It does last, and there are some people, and they will go unnamed nationally, that it seems like they get it wrong all the time. But I'm glad I'm just in the entertainment business now. No more of this hard reporting, because I used to be like, I have to have the story first. Now I could care less.
Right.
But going forward, one last thing. How do you like New Orleans? I know it's very, very warm here, particularly right now when the indexes are up to 115. Being from Pennsylvania, what's it like for you and your wife?
We like it now at first. That first training camp I'm out there, we come back from West Virginia, the first day in the New Orleans heat.
Yeah.
I almost passed out probably 3 times that week.
It's brutal.
Yeah, but
oh, I still pass out.
You adjust to it, though, I think, a little bit. And, it feels like home to me. I really like it here. The city's embraced me, and, I'd like to be here for a while.
Well, you are, I consider, a Saints insider because you get some info that not everybody can get. How did you get the sources like this to trust you so much?
I have no idea. I think maybe just trying to do a good job, being detailed, not getting stuff wrong, being fair to people when they talk to you, not trying to burn people. And, we try to keep it on the field. If it's happening outside of the field, I'm not going to touch it. I don't care about, stuff that's happening away from football. We try to keep it strictly on football.
Junior Gillette type stuff? Just in general. I'm just throwing that out.
When it starts to link into football, yeah. But I mean, stuff like that, I try to not get caught up in the gossip and try to be fair. And I think people respect that, and it's paid off.
All right, let's talk Saints. This is the first year I can remember. I started 2012 training camp, and obviously I thought their best season, and many Saints fans will agree, 2011. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but that team was probably the most dynamic of any they've ever had. But you had Bounty Gate, so I don't think people were thinking Super Bowl because you didn't have Sean Payton. They thought they'd do better than 7-9. But this honestly is the first year that I think fans are truly thinking Super Bowl. Some maybe after the 13 season because they did go 11-5, but it wasn't the same kind of 11-5 that we just saw this past year. So what are your thoughts with the Saints going in? Now, there are a lot of good NFC teams, as we know, so you got to temper the expectations. But as far as a unit, what are you seeing from this team?
I think they're very good. I think it's the deepest that this team's ever been since I've been here. You look at a lot of the battles, it's high-end stuff. It's not Bobby Richardson trying to make the team and then starting for the whole year. So, I think they're very good. I think if they aren't in the Final Four, it's going to be, it's crazy to say this just thinking about where they were last year, even 2 years ago. But if they aren't in the Final Four teams in the NFC, I think it's a disappointing season for them.
Isn't it crazy, though, the NFL? Because you don't see this in basketball, and in baseball you see it sometimes to an extent where the bottom teams can come up. But in football, like the Cowboys, I mean, right this time last year, and of course we knew that the Ezekiel Elliott thing was looming, but that's a team that expected to take that next step. They were 13-3 the year before, and all of a sudden they just plummeted to the bottom. Do the Saints have any worry about that possibly happening?
I mean, this is a very good division, so it could happen. And if these young players don't keep ascending, there's a possibility. I have no reason to doubt Kamara or Marshawn Lattimore. And look, they're going to have Alex Anzalone back too, and he's a guy that they really liked and thought could be a dynamic linebacker before his injury. So he's going to know what he's doing. So that's almost like getting another draft pick. If Davenport is just solid, he doesn't have to be a 10-sack guy, but if he's earning his snaps and not just being given them because he was a first-round pick, I don't see that plummeting happening. I think that they've built this team the right way, and they've addressed the areas they needed to address. I think Demario Davis is a very big signing for him. Their run defense allowed 4.3 yards per carry last year. I think he's going to address that. Patrick Robinson helps the slot. I just don't see him falling back.
Yeah, they seem to fill holes with guys that aren't too expensive. I mean, you got some quality guys. And then you have Kirk Coleman, the new free agent that's going to play safety. And everybody's like, well, you already have Von Bell. You already have Marcus Williams. This competition never hurt anybody.
Yeah, and I think there was some communication issues still with the secondary last year. Their bunch formations, trips. Saints had some difficulty sorting that out, and I think getting Kirk Coleman in there, he's somebody who communicates well. He's known for his intelligence, and I think he's going to help settle that secondary a lot.
Speaking of that secondary, it's kind of funny because this is considered a strong point now, right? when you think about when you first got here, I think 2 of the first 3 seasons, maybe you were here, maybe 4. That was the worst defense of all time, and a lot of it had to do. I mean all time statistically, NFL, not just Saints history. But they've come a long way. And what do you give the reasons for that?
Good drafting. I mean, really, and signing the right players and getting rid of guys like Brandon Browner and some of these, it really just comes down to, I think you go back to them getting rid of Rick Reprish and bringing in Jeff Ireland and everything from there. They replaced all the scouts, and just this defense, you look from 2-3 years ago, there's probably 2 or 3 guys left total from maybe that 2014 team. Right. So it's a whole new unit. They've focused in. They got a system now. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, we went to OTAs and they were running one defense, and then training camp, the whole scheme had changed by then. So I think things have just settled down, and they know what they're doing. They're getting guys that fit the vision, and you're seeing the results. I mean, I may be blanking, but I'm trying to think of somebody besides Cam Jordan that's still here. Is there anybody else? Because it was Vaccaro last year, but he's going now too. Bush would have been another one. He's gone now. He's going, It might just be Cam Jordan. And that's probably a good thing from the worst defense. But this team, it seems the backups, like you mentioned earlier, are just better than they used to be. There's no undrafted free agent like Bobby Richardson, but if you looked at one position, you say, man, maybe this is one we might have to worry about on the defense, what would it be? I would just go still defensive line at this point. And they were fine. They were adequate last year. It's just I think you want to see that pass rush get a little better. And it's not I don't think anything's really a huge concern because they got bodies there. They're going to be decent at worst. I think linebacker's another one, though, that you're going to look at and just kind of see how the pieces fit together. But I think they got the right guys now. But that run defense, just the middle of that defense, they allowed 4.3 yards per carry last year. If they're playing in closer games or if they're behind, that becomes a bigger issue. And the schedule's a little bit harder this year, so that just needs to be better. That's the one trouble area for me. Okay, before I leave the defense, I have to ask you a question. Marcus Davenport, that's been a big issue. Should they have giving up the draft pick from this year and next year's pick? What are your thoughts on that? And as far as him being an impact player, and did they give up too much? I kind of got my go-to line on this, but I think the bigger risk was not making that move. Yes, I'm with you. Thank you for saying it. Because they remain a good team. The opportunity to get an impact pass rusher isn't going to be there. That's something you aren't getting at pick 20 in the draft every year. You got to make a move to get a good guy. So they had to go up and get him. Ryan Nielsen has done a very good job developing players. All of his guys from NC State got drafted this year, all 4 of them across the line. So if you're going to give somebody a raw piece of clay to mold, Ryan Nielsen's the guy. And Marcus Davenport has all the tools. It's just how does it come together? I mean, I love that you brought up Nielsen because I think that is a huge pick for the defensive line as a coach. But the linebackers last year with Mike Nolan, and I just want to throw this out because he's a former head coach. His dad was a head coach, also with the Saints as well. But Mike Nolan's impact on the linebackers on this team. I think it's significant, especially, coming from Joe Vitt. I think Joe Vitt was somebody that people in the organization really liked, but that, it's hard to tell how good a coach is. But when you're seeing guys not developing or first-round picks kind of busting out, you kind of got to start looking at the coaches funny. And no doubt. So he's somebody, I think everybody was looking at side-eyed, and, he laughed at Mike Nolan as the experience. I think he's made a very good impact on everybody loved Joe Vitt, but it had run its course at that point. Now to the offense, the big question. What are they going to do without Mark Ingram for the first 4 weeks? You also have a guy that just got 1,500 total yards. First time I believe a rookie's ever done that, or at least some kind of record he had. But point being is, how do they fill the hole with Ingram? I think the issue is the finer details, pass protection and things like that. I think maybe they don't know who's going to fill that role, and that's maybe why you see Shane Vereen being brought in. He's done very well at that. West is another guy that has a reputation for being good in those spots. And then the younger players they have are a little bit unproven. So I think they kind of set that barrier there. Hey, these are the 2 veteran guys. You young guys need to exceed them if you want to make this team and get snaps. And I think that's a good move for them. How it's going to fill in, we don't know yet. I mean, there is talent there, but they got to prove it. Well, I'm glad you brought Vereen up because he was a high pick at one time. This is a guy that went to Cal. I mean, where Cam Jordan went. But as far as a guy like him who's got more catches out of the backfield than he basically has yards, or yards out of the backfield, I should say, do you think he might be a good fit? I brought him up in the open because the Saints just signed him, but what does he bring? Obviously, he played with the Patriots, and he played with the Giants as well. I don't think, as far as carries, I don't think he's a Mark Ingram replacement. Right. He's an outside-the-numbers guy, pass catcher, pass protection. So it's interesting how he's going to fit in. I mean, he could add another. Can he trade roles a little bit with Kamara? Like Kamara, because Kamara is one of the rare guys that has the shift, but he can also run between the tackles.
Will he kind of take over a little bruising role and maybe get some outside yards too? But you got a guy that can come in on third down?
I think he could take some of those third down responsibilities. Or you look back to when they had Darren Sproles and Pierre, like sometimes they put both those guys out on the field and it's kind of pick your poison, and you got these running backs going all over the place. So I think if he shows up and does well in camp, it could be another toy for Sean Payton to play with.
All right, speaking of toys, let's switch from the skill positions real quick down to the line, because I think this is one of the most important parts of the Saints. That offensive line coach, and you pronounce his name because I always get it wrong. Roshar, how you pronounce his name?
I think it's Roshar.
Roshar. Well, this line, I'm talking from left tackle to right tackle, all 5 guys. And we go Armstead, obviously you have Pete, you have Unger, you have Ramczyk, and then the other guard would be, who am I leaving out here?
Pete Ramczyk.
Anyway.
Larry Warford.
Warford. Okay, guy that ended up being an alternate in the Pro Bowl game. I mean, that's pretty solid across the way, but Unger's the guy that anchors this line.
Yeah, he is. That line, if everybody stays healthy, that's one of the strengths of the team. Teron Armstead is the major X factor there. His health is going to be a huge thing for this team. That's one of the big questions. If he doesn't play all 16 games, who fills in? Senio Clemente was the fill-in, played 60% of the snaps last year. He's in Houston now. So now you got the rookie from Florida State, Rick Leonard, and Jermon Bushrod are kind of the 2 guys there.
Right.
And both are a little bit unproven. So if he goes down, they're going to have to figure out who fits in. But if Armstead's healthy, this line could be great. I think the loss of Ingram at that point, if he's playing, is mitigated quite a bit because he's just that good at left tackle.
And the funny thing is, Armstead is he's kind of like Colson, the best player we have that have never been to a Pro Bowl, because he's always, every time he's on the cusp, there's an injury that sets him back and he doesn't make it. Do you think this guy will ever be able to play at Pro Bowl level?
I think he plays at a Pro Bowl level. Can he do it for 16 games? That's the big question. The health is a huge thing at this point. I don't think anybody can say. I mean, I talked to him a lot, and it seems like he's on the right track. He's working out with the right people, getting back to the fundamentals with this guy named Duke Manyweather, which is kind of a big deal. But, I mean, that's getting a little deep into football. But,
right.
If he can stay healthy for 16 games, it's not Pro Bowl, it's all pro. I mean, I think he's that good.
We went through this entire segment without mentioning Drew Brees, but let's mention his toys. Everybody here knows what Drew Brees brings. The toys he has now, he added 2 or 3 new ones. One was there before, he came back, but talk about how he's going to spread the ball and to who.
Well, I think, Mike Thomas, obviously, he's probably a top 5 wide receiver in the league. That is a very interesting position. Cam Meredith, I think, is the perfect guy for the Saints. You watch his film, he fits in very well. Traquan Smith is very intriguing as a prospect. For him, it's kind of where is he going to get his snaps? Because your top 3 are probably set with Meredith, Thomas, and Ted Ginn, and then you get to that 4th guy. Is Traquan Smith going to kind of be like Meacham in 2009, where he's the 4th receiver, but he's going deep and opening things up? He can do a lot. He's very intriguing. So if all those guys hit, very deep at wide receiver.
I mean, very deep. If Meredith can come close to what he was before his injury, and that's a big if, the Saints should be set. By the way, we have a tradition here. I'm going to get you to sign one of our balls. You see, please don't sign as big as Bobby Hebert, because I had to get a new ball too quick. But and we have a gift certificate to go to Shays de la Shays, an uptown restaurant.
Thank you.
But here's a nice little sweet little thing here. Drew Brees, speaking of him, he wears these all the time. The Task Performance, a New Orleans company, the softest stuff you'll ever put on. And like I said, I've been wearing it for 6 years and love it. Hey, we'll get you on this. This is the main ball right here. The brand new with Archie Manning, Alvin Gentry, a bunch of these other guys. So here, Nick Underhill, I appreciate you. If you're not following Nick right now, throw him in your search engine and get him on your Twitter. You will thank me later, and I appreciate you. Thanks so much. This is the first time, man.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Probably last time, right?
No, I'll be back.
Nick doesn't do a ton of interviews, but I do appreciate this. Hey, coming up, we're going to have some more Saints talk later in the show. I've got Andrew Doak from WLAE-TV coming. But next, this is going to be a treat for me, because the first LSU basketball player that I truly loved is my next guest. His name is Durand, Rudy Macklin, coming up right here on Primetime Sports.
Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander is underwritten by Task Performance.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old rockin' bowl at Mid-City Lane. All night, let's bowl, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rockin' bowl at Mid-City Lane, the home of rockin' bowl.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and we're going to get back to some Saints. I know training camp's here, and I know all you Saints fans are eager to hear more about what's going to happen for this upcoming season, but right now we have a treat for me and all the LSU fans out there, because if you were a basketball fan in the 70s and early 80s at LSU, well, my next guest is somebody you know very well. His name is Durand Rudy Macklin. Two-time All-American, first-team All-American. He was also the SEC Player of the Year, LSU's all-time leading rebounder. That's right, over Shaq, over everybody else that was there, and second leading scorer, only behind a guy named Pistol Pete, who has more points than anybody in college basketball history. He's got more points than Bob Pettit. He's got more points than Shaquille O'Neal, more than Chris Jackson, and everybody else not named Pete. And here he is right here for the first time on Primetime Sports. This is a treat for me because I loved LSU basketball in the late 70s, and you were one of the main reasons that they got brought back to prominence. So
thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Dale always says this, and I've developed a relationship with him over the last 15, 20 years, and he says, man, Durand Macklin was the guy that put us on the map. You know, we had those hustlers when he first came around. You know, this is the post-Pistol Pete era, obviously. Right. But when he got you to come from Louisville, Kentucky in 1976, he said, this is where it all started. And you had 5 years at LSU because you had an injury in one of those years. But talk about the reasons you came down to the Bayou.
Oh, man, it was an extraordinary time. You know, recruiting, the rules were kind of lax back then. And so
some would say they still are. Some would say.
Yeah, well, the rest of the country, you know, I was what they call blue chipper.
Yeah.
Now they call them five-star recruits. Yeah. But as a blue chipper, and my best friend, Darryl Griffith, who played at the University of Louisville, and our other buddy, Bobby Turner, you know, we were all blue chippers in the same state. And everybody thought we were all going to go to the same school together, which is the University of Louisville.
Sure.
But when Darryl and Bobby signed with Louisville and I didn't, it just opened the floodgates for everybody. But LSU had been with me from the beginning. It was amazing because Coach Artolis, the assistant coach, we played against Mel High, my best friend Darryl, number one, number two teams in the state. The first game of the season.
Dr. Duncanstein.
Yeah.
Come on.
And so Coach Tolis ran into my father accidentally going outside the gate, and that's when the recruiting began. And so when I narrowed it down to Louisville and LSU and just push all the other schools aside, Coach Dale Brown came to my high school, and Denny Crum called the same day and said, don't do anything until I get there. He was going to take me to go see Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
Now, when Muhammad Ali would have said, stay home, I probably would have stayed home. Because it was my idol, you know. We grew up in the same area. And so he said, Rudy, let's take a ride. And let me go see that famous park where you learn how to play called Shawnee Park. I said, okay. And so as we was going out the gate of the park lot of the school, you could see Denny Crum pulling up.
Right.
And I said, well, Coach,
legendary Louisville coach who won 2 national titles.
So I said, Coach, let me tell Denny Crum that, Coach Crum, that we're going to be right back. He said, no, we're not going to be long. He'll be there.
Exactly.
Great move on this part, right?
That sounds like like Dale Brown, my guy. All right.
So we go to the park. I give him a tour of the park and show him all the courts. And he said, Rudy, all these big basketball schools that are recruiting you, they're going to do well whether you go there or not. He said, but if you come to LSU, you can always say you built something. He said, I need somebody that can come in and make an impact right away. He said, I recruited some guys to go around. He said, all I need is you. He said, if you can come to LSU, he said, I know we're at the bottom of the SEC, we're a football school, and everybody thinks that you're going to go to Louisville. He said, but I'm telling you, if you come to LSU, you can always say you built something.
That kind of sounds like my pitch when I was an agent. You can go to these big agencies, and obviously, but who's going to call you back? They already got 100 guys. The same kind of premise there.
And for the next 2 hours, we sat in the park, left Denny Crum back there, talking about how we were going to build a program, how we're going to be a running team, what type of defense we're going to play. We mapped it all out right there at the park in 2 hours.
Wow.
When I signed with LSU, the basketball world went,
what are you doing?
This is a football
kind of like
school.
Ben Simmons when he did it. You know?
I said, this school is last in SEC. And I came, and it was just amazing because I had my doubts.
Right.
Because after we lost Athletes in Action and nobody came to the
In
game.
the preseason, you're like, what am I doing?
We had media day and nobody showed up but the school newspaper and the Morning Advocate. And after my buddy Charles Alexander invited me to Tiger Stadium for that
My two
media
favorite
day,
athletes, Charles Alexander and Rudy Macklin.
So I said, Mom, I think I made a mistake.
Wow.
And she said, well,
I did not know this part.
you going to stay there because you made a commitment. You have to honor it. And she said, son, they got you there for a reason. You may be the one to make the difference. They didn't come all this way to get you for no reason. And I stayed in that next game. The first game is when we played against Tulane. And I pulled 32 rebounds.
32, still a record. 32 rebounds in his first game. By the way, 42 years later, you're still in Baton Rouge. So something worked out.
Well, I went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Right. But yeah, back. But point being, you're there. But hey, the thing is also, by the way, I have some trivia for other people. Dr. Duncanstein, obviously Darryl Griffith you talked about, who beat y'all in the Elite Eight before you went to the Final Four the following year, ended up being the first draft pick that the Jazz, when they were out of New Orleans, went in Utah in 1980. I guess it was in the second draft, but the first full season after he became there. But that guy was legendary for his 44-inch vertical leap. But by the way,
see him every day.
Let's go to the 1981 because this is the year everybody remembers. I mean, LSU won 26 games in a row. They were 17-0 in conference until they got beaten that tight game against Kentucky, and they ended up going to the Final Four, beating that incredible Wichita State team. You remember that team obviously had Austin Carr and Ben Livingston and that group. But talk about that run because you lost the second game, and this is when Arkansas was in the Southwest Conference, to the Razorbacks, and you were 1-1. But you went on a 26-game run, beating some very, very good teams in the process, the Georgetowns of the world. What was that like? Because the things you wanted this to be, it came to fruition. Well,
we were ranked fairly high in the beginning in the preseason, and Coach Brown said, Rudy, I see something. I wasn't playing relaxed. I was put a lot of pressure on myself because number one, of course, I'm the leader of the team, and so I wanted to lead my team. And plus, you got pro scouts in the back of your mind as well, and you got school. Yeah. And so all those pressures were coming upon me, and I didn't play very well in the beginning. And then when we lost to Arkansas in the Alaska shootout, and that's when he came to my room. We had a long talk. He said, you have to learn how to play relaxed, play your game. It's going to come back to you. I wasn't shooting well. I just wasn't, doing my normal. I wasn't in rhythm. And so that next game we came back, we played against UNLV. And I really lit it up. And then it started to get a rhythm. And then we found our rhythm. And plus the new guys, like Leonard Mitchell and Johnny Jones had started to come around. And so we found our rhythm because we were so experienced. We were a senior-dominated team, and everything centered kind of around me. We played inside out. And when we got Howard Carter,
he was southpaw from Redemptorist.
Because I had to tell him, you have to shoot that ball. Because if you don't shoot,
he could shoot.
I'm gonna get double teamed.
I didn't think you had to tell Howard he had to shoot.
No, he was hesitant.
Was he hesitant? All right.
So I had to go to him and grab him by his collar. I said, "We brought you here for a reason."
I see.
All right. We played on the same side of the offense, and I needed him to shoot the ball. And so that run, we went through the exhibition season. Yeah. And then when the SEC came around, which was the toughest league in the country at the time.
Kentucky was rolling,
Georgia had a team.
Yes.
Mississippi State had a team.
Dominique Wilkins was on Georgia.
Yeah. The game was
Fleming. Yeah.
And so we marched through the SEC, which was virtually unheard of. We went 17-0. And when we got to Kentucky, the last play where Howard Carter got fouled by Sam Bowie, they knocked him down. And 23,000 people, the referee was pretty much intimidated, I guess.
Sure.
And so we overcame that and then waited for our bid with the tournament. We was the number one seed. And the pressure that goes along with that is tremendous, because one and you're done.
And you were I'm not saying the favorite, but LSU was at least one of the very big favorites of this tournament. I mean, I'm going to say, and they had, obviously, you had Isaiah Thomas, you had North Carolina, and that Final Four had Ralph Sampson in Virginia. Some loaded teams, but I just remember this one injury, and correct me if I'm wrong, you hurt your finger bad. It felt like it was mangled, and you were having a hard time trying to deal with it. Most people would have sat out, and particularly in today's.
Coach Brown wanted me to sit out. He wanted me to sit out. I said, no, this is my senior year. and broke this finger.
Right.
And I tried to get used to playing with that injury because I had a little stint on it, and I said just put a Band-Aid on it to cover the stitches.
You can't do it, man.
And it was pretty painful, throbbing. I took pain.
I got this finger still not can't stretch it from basketball.
But I needed it. But when we approached the Indiana game, I wish I would have done some things differently. I wish I would have practiced even more with this finger, regardless of the pain. And Bobby Knight, I always give credit to those who play a terrific game, and I give credit to Landon Turner.
Landon Turner, big time.
Did some things to me in that game, him and Ray Tolbert.
Tolbert, yes.
And that made me uncomfortable, and I couldn't get in a rhythm. You know, I'm a rhythm player. Most great players are rhythm players.
Sure.
So, but when I talked to some of the guys when I was in the NBA and the Indiana guys, they said that was Bobby Knight's main focus, to make sure he put a bigger guy on me and another bigger guy behind me, and they trapped me pretty good.
I mean, I remember Randy Whitman, I believe, was on that team. And obviously everybody remembers Isaiah. But I remember LSU had a lead, and I was there up a half at 3, but I think they were up by 8 or 9 or 10 even in the first half. And then the second half was just when everything kind of fell apart. They got outscored 41-19 and lost that game. But that has to stick. But let's go some more positive.
Okay.
Because the Kentucky Giant that was slayed, and some say the greatest. I was 12, and this is one of the first games I truly remember everything about, was when you beat Kentucky, the team that won the national championship in '78, and that team was remarkable. Now, was that the year were you hurt that year, or did you play?
No, I played.
You played. Okay, 79's the year you were hurt. You were playing.
It was 78.
But 95-94 in overtime, and this was tremendous. I mean, there you are, right there. And they won this game. But talk about slaying the Giant finally, because you swept Kentucky the following year, and then you ended up splitting every year. So Dale Brown finally kind of had Kentucky's number a little bit, certainly more than anybody else did.
Yeah, he did. I think our record during my era was like 8-3 against Kentucky, something like that. Dale Brown knows all the data.
Sure.
But that particular game, the media throughout the country was like, well, we smell an upset in Baton Rouge. You know, like they saw it coming.
Sure.
They beat us kind of handily in Kentucky, but the referees, you got to know, Lexington. We had a little foul trouble then, but we were ready. That was the most relaxed I've ever felt. I don't know why. But when we got to the arena and we saw the people outside, lines wrapped around the building.
A little different than that first Athletes in Action game.
Oh, man, when nobody was there. I realized where we had come from.
Right.
Because there were like maybe 200 or 300 people the first game, you know, Athletes in Action.
And that's only a year and a half later.
I know.
I mean, that's right there.
Yeah, but there was people sitting in the stairwells, and the fire marshal said, just go stand somewhere. And it was just so packed. And I missed one shot the whole game. I went 11 for 12. I knew I was on my way to a 40-point game because I was just feeling it.
You felt it.
But the foul trouble came with the starting 5.
Yeah. Oh, they all fouled out.
We all fouled out.
I forgot about that. They all fouled out.
All starters fouled out. But we had a Willie Sims. Jordy, Floyd Bailey, Rick Maddock, Ernie Brown.
Rick Maddock, that's it.
Unheard of guys on the floor.
That's the legendary story when Maddock was in the game.
But Willie Sims, who was just unbelievable player on our team.
Oh, yeah.
He carried them, and they ran the 4 corners. And Kentucky had some foul trouble themselves. And so they had to play some guys that normally didn't play a lot either. But it was our guys, our reserves, we call them, that came in and closed it out for us.
I mean, Kentucky that year, Kyle Macy, I'll go through it. Truman Clayton, you had the big guy from New Orleans, Rick Roby, Mike Phillips. You had obviously James Lee, super sub.
Yeah.
That team was loaded.
Scheidler, you know.
Scheidler, the guard. Yeah. By the way, that was the only loss they had.
That's right.
In conference that year, and just kind of like in '81 where they only lost. So when you think back to like Macy and all these guys and that team that won it all, does that give you some pride thinking about how you knocked them out that night?
Yeah, it does. You know, because I always keep telling myself, you know, what if I hadn't fouled out?
Oh, Jack Givens, by the way.
My homeboy,
we talked about he scored 41 in the finals. Come on, against Duke.
Well, see, we all knew each other from back in Kentucky playing pickup games. And so it was just the fans that really got into it as far as rivalry goes, but we were all friends. And so, but I just knew then, I said, if I hadn't gotten in foul trouble and I was on a roll, I would have scored 40 or more, no doubt. Yeah.
Before this became kind of trendy to do, when I was working at Turner Sports in Atlanta, we would all sit around and just do crazy lists. And I would say This is before anybody else was doing it, and all of a sudden Sports Illustrated a few years did it. And I would say I put LSU's top 5 against anybody's in the country. And everybody's like, you're out of your mind. Give me a credit. I mean, UCLA, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky. Well, they might have 40 greats, but LSU's 5, I still will say, would beat any 5 in the country. And that, of course, would consist of Bob Pettit, who was considered the greatest power forward in NBA history until guys like Tim Duncan came around. Yeah. You had Pistol Pete, the all-time leading scorer by over 1,000 points in college, and obviously a Hall of Famer in the NBA. You had Shaquille O'Neal, nothing else needs to be said, one of the greatest centers and players of all time. And Chris Jackson, the most electric guard I've ever seen, period. I mean, in college level. And Durand, Rudy, Macklin would be that 5th guy. And I'm going to say this, that team, dare I say, would beat any other. If you put 5 up, I'm not talking if you put a 12 team like a North Carolina can do. But if you put 5 up, what do you think?
Well, Sports Illustrated did like a computer.
3 years after I did this,
yeah,
yes.
And,
right.
and they had us, winning it all.
Right.
Because our starting 5 was tremendous. And but it's just a thrill to be part of the LSU family, and it's even a bigger thrill for me because I was the beginning to take LSU from the bottom of the SEC. In my senior year, when I left, you couldn't get a ticket, and so
it's amazing.
Dale Brown's vision came true.
In '83, it was the ticket to have.
Oh man, it was exciting time, man.
The whole '80s. I mean, you started this thing in the '70s, but the whole '80s was that way. Because I went to law school there too, and I remember Shaq, and it was amazing to be a part of. So when you look at the LSU family, and I consider all you basketball players, all athletes, you're best buddies with Charles Alexander, who I think is one of the greatest running backs in college history. When you look at the family of athletes, what are your first thoughts?
Oh man, we were a closeness because. Before they outlawed athletic dorms, in Broussard Hall where we lived, we all lived together.
Right.
So all the football stars, baseball stars, basketball stars, track and field, every sport at LSU, we all lived together. We all ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. And we just had a great time knowing one another, and we're all still friends to this day.
Well, we have a tradition, and since you're LSU, I'm going to get you to sign the football and the basketball, if you don't mind.
Cool.
Tradition, we sign the balls. We have a bunch over on the offset, too. We have a shot of you and Dick Gregory, and I want you, before I do this is a gift certificate task. I'm sorry, that's Chez Del Chez, a restaurant uptown, right by the river bend.
Oh, thank you.
And this is a shirt that I promise you, Rudy, once you start wearing Task, it is the softest stuff you'll ever put on your body.
Different kind of fabric or something?
It's bamboo fiber technology. Look at you asking. Hey, Under Armour, all that's got polyester. That's amazing. Okay, but as you sign balls, I'd love you to just kind of tell us how you knew Dick Gregory, because I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Dick Gregory had a vitamin plan, and Coach Brown was
interested.
Maybe a big
one that I can read later.
Yeah.
Put yourself up top there, right? Come on.
And I was part of Dick Gregory's vitamin plan, and I took about 50 pills a day because he wanted me to increase my stamina. And so he and he managed my progress each day, and I felt myself, playing even more minutes. And so he would come to my room on a nightly basis and check on me, and we have these rap sessions all the time. And then people found out that he came to my room, and I had a bunch of people in my room all the time.
He was obviously a great comedian and great activist.
He was a mentor of mine for years.
Well, I introduced you at the Louisiana Hall of Fame. You probably didn't know because I was off camera.
Okay.
And I said, Durand, Rudy, Macklin.
Oh, that's you.
That was me.
Okay.
That was me. And then also I did
cool.
Willis Reed, too.
Yeah.
And Willis Reed is obviously, you know him well.
Oh, yeah.
That is a legend. That's a two-time NBA champion, Hall of Famer, famous for limping on the court against the Lakers.
Great picture there.
And how about you? You have a nice relationship with him as well.
Oh, man. Behind that curtain where all the other legends are there with the new ones.
Yes.
And we go in and tease the new ones, call them rookies.
Rookies.
And so Willis Reed always coming up to me. He said, that doggone Macklin, there you are again. He said, you were one of my favorites.
You're one of my favorites, man.
My friend.
This has been a treat.
Thank you so much.
A big-time treat for me.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.
I can't even tell you. Like I said, you signed right by Karl Malone. How funny. Because Karl the mailman obviously was my favorite man in the NBA, but this to me is a bigger thrill because I didn't root for Louisiana Tech. I rooted for LSU. I thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that is Durand, Rudy, Macklin. Hey, start Googling them up. You'll see what I'm talking about. Hey, coming up next, we already talked to Nick Underhill. Now we've got Andrew Doak from WLAE-TV. We're going to tell you more about the Saints. Coming up next right here on Primetime Sports. Oh, man, that was such a treat. I want to thank Durand, Rudy, Macklin. How about E.T. right there? He just left the Dirty Dozen brass band. He's been in that band for 37 years, and now he is starting a new project. We're going to have him on the show soon. But, hey, Nick Underhill was there earlier, and if you didn't get your Saintsville, we're about to put the cherry on top right here because I have WWL, and I can't call him new anymore. He's WWL TV's one-year veteran, and his name is Andrew Doak. And he came in last year. Remember they had a couple of guys leave, and one, Leslie Spoon, went to the morning show, and Lions Yellen left. Well, they brought in a couple, and one of them is sitting right here. Andrew.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, appreciate you bringing me on. Tough act to follow with Rudy Macklin and then Nick Underhill before him, too.
Dude,
so I got to bring my A game, I guess.
Think about this. When you have Shaq and Big Baby and Bob Pettit and all these greats, he's the all-time leading rebounder. In
32 in his first game. That's
game
unbelievable.
Ever. 32. And he also is the second leading scorer. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, second leading, and he was SEC Player of the Year, enough said. Two-time first-team All-American, enough said. But let's move on to you. You're an Austin native. You love football. You played the game yourself, and you came back. What is your first year like being back in New Orleans? Being in New Orleans.
In New Orleans. Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I'm living down in the quarter. I don't know if I'm going to do that next year. I think I probably.
It's loud, huh?
Yeah, I probably got my fill over this last year, but really enjoyed it so far. Really feel more comfortable now that we're have like a full season of Saints football underneath my belt. Got to cover the Pelicans. Now we get to go season number 2 and really get all 16 games in the playoffs.
What's your first year been? Give me a quick synopsis.
It's
whirlwind.
It's been a whirlwind, and I mean trying to really immerse myself in New Orleans, and I think it's kind of a city that it has a vibe and an energy to it, and you got to be able to embrace it and kind of roll with it. And I feel like I've tried to do that so far. And when I came down here, I didn't know anybody, so it was kind of just being tossed in a melting pot and trying to fit in. So I like it so far. It's been great.
So you and Ricardo are with Doug Mouton over there, and you both came together. And we're going to go ahead and give you credit because the Saints are back to doing stuff like the Saints did a decade ago, winning football games. And that had to be kind of fun in your first year in New Orleans. And they go to the second round of the playoffs.
So the week that I moved here was the week that they played the Panthers on the road, and that's what started the 8-game winning streak. So I told people, look, I don't know if I'm the good luck charm, but I did bring some good.
They were 0-2 before that.
They were 0-2 before that.
And by the way, they were 0-2, won 8 in a row, and people forget they were 11-3 in their last 14 games, and 12-4 if you count the 2 playoff games, and very close to going to the NFC Championship game. Were you up in Minnesota?
I was, and that was deathly cold. I mean, I've really never been in any cold like that.
I remember you had a live shot, by the way.
It was negative 25 degrees.
By the way, do you remember the live shot I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where things were kind of going haywire.
So you remember?
I remember. I forgot about it.
With your phone, if it gets too hot and it gives you that, hey, it's shutting down.
Yeah,
it does that when it's too cold. And so it dropped the IFB. And so, yeah, that was a learning experience.
No,
I've never been in anything that cold before.
I have to laugh. Nobody knows what we're talking about. But let's get to the Saints because we did talk with Nick Underhill. An overview. We're going to go general right now because we got kind of specific. An overview of this team. Obviously, there's no Mark Ingram to start the season. What does that mean to you?
I think it could serve as maybe a little bit of a distraction, but I think they found a great number. With Alvin Kamara, the number of touches was around 13 per game. But, really I think that that really is a little bit misleading because I think that went up a little bit, throughout the end of the season once became a cog in this offense.
But still, for a guy to get over 1,500 total yards and literally play under 50% of the snaps.
45%, I know. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. This is crazy numbers.
It's tough to think how he could improve on last season. I mean, he is an unbelievable talent, and every time that he touched the football, it was just you knew something crazy was going to happen. I think it means with Mark Ingram being out, maybe he is relied upon a little bit more. I don't think that means touches out of the backfield, but I think more they're going to split him out wide, whether it's in the slot or outside.
He's not going to become Todd Gurley, get 25 carries.
Not at all. I think you might see him have a little bit more of a role as a receiver. And then I think Terrence West is going to take some carries off him, and then maybe even somebody like Shane Vereen who can help them in their screen game as well, which is basically an extension of their running game.
I talked a lot with Nick about the defense on this team. Yeah, there you see, that's obviously Terrence West right there. Shane Vereen is another one. But I talked a lot about the defense and some about the offense, but I want your take. You're coming into, you're from Austin. Drew Brees is from Austin. The first time you met him, did that come up in conversation?
I actually have never told him that.
You never told him?
I'm from Austin, Texas. No, but I went to a rival high school, Bowie, and they're actually not in the same district anymore now. But yeah, that is a fun fact, obviously. And With Drew Brees, I was telling somebody this the other day. The crazy thing that I think hasn't really been a storyline this offseason is, he's 39 years old, and I just wonder how much longer guys can go when they get to this age, because quarterbacks seem to kind of just fall off a table, like whether it was Peyton Manning or Brett Favre, and Tom Brady's 40 years old. He's going to make 41 this upcoming season. But it never seems like a gradual slowdown.
Well, let me say this. This was a big topic a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was the year before you got here or the year before that, where certainly nationally, because he was hiding a shoulder injury. And there were some balls that were questionable. And they lost to Tampa in a home game, I remember specifically, where he was suffering through it. And everybody's like, it's over. He's finally got to the age. He's 37 or something. And he's like, he's too old, and it's done. Well, we here on the inside knew about his injury. He had a plantar fascia issue as well that same year. And Drew Brees is a phenom in the workout world, all right? I'm not saying he's like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but his core and his cardio are second to none. And that's helping him stay young. But nobody's talking about that anymore.
No, they're not. And I think it's a legitimate question. But, look, I think with the contract situation, the extension that they agreed to this past season, I think it was mutually beneficial for both teams, where if, worse comes to worse this coming season, if it doesn't work out the way that they think, or if they feel like they need to both go different ways, then financially they're not tied to the hip to each other. Drew Brees would become a free agent. And, look, hopefully that's not the conversation we're having at the end of this season, because there's a lot of buzz around this team, and, the Super Bowl buzz, I think, is back and real with this team for the first time since maybe 2014 or 2011.
Really.
Yeah.
And actually, going into the season 2010, because 11 was their best season, but they had Bountygate.
Sure.
And you kind of knew with Peyton there, you were hoping they'd go there, but you kind of knew that without the general, it might be tough. So really, since 2010, they haven't had the buzz I think they're starting to have right now.
And I think it's completely legitimate. I think when you look at this rookie class that they just had, now a sophomore class, I think they could be one of the best in the NFL. They basically hit on every player that they had brought in last year. And I think a lot of eyes are looking towards, the marquee rookie that they brought in this year in Marcus Davenport, because Sean Payton told CBS Sports, I think it was just earlier this week, when they lost that game in Minnesota, immediately he started thinking about how can we bring somebody in either free agency or through the draft that can eliminate a play like the Minnesota Miracle from happening. And one of the guys he thought of, like for a couple months at a time leading up to the draft, was Marcus Davenport, and it was just too hard for him to be able to pass up on that situation. But he's going to have a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, he is.
And
he's a monster, though.
I think he's an unbelievably raw talent, and I think the good thing that I notice about him is that he doesn't ever seem to be. I've only had a couple conversations with him.
He's unique, though, isn't he?
He doesn't.
The conversations. He's a little different.
Well, when they drafted him, you saw they put his interest to the side, and he's into like anime and poetry, so he's a little bit different guy.
No, and I love it.
Yeah. So he's going to be a different character.
Let me ask you about another Marcus.
Yeah.
Marcus Williams, because I have, in fact, Nick and I were on a radio show recently together, and we both had the same. They said, what's a crazy prediction? And my prediction was that this guy was going to be a Pro Bowler. If not this year, by next year. I really firmly believe that by his third year, he'll be a Pro Bowler. But we all know about that big play. And how do you think it's going to affect his psyche? Because he was having a fantastic game before that. Interception, he had deflected a couple passes. But there's one of the picks. But that play, obviously, was ESPY's just named it the play of the year. How do you think it's going to affect him?
I think when his career is over, I still think that's going to be a play that people remember. I don't think he's ever going to get out of people from forgetting that, I guess.
No question. No,
I think that's a play that people are always going to remember. But I think that he is a level of talent that is a Pro Bowl level talent. I totally agree. And I think he can be one of the best safeties in the NFL. So I think going into this season, I think what he needs to do more than anything is to come out and kind of embrace it a little bit more, because I really haven't seen him do that in the media, and he's run different hype videos this offseason about him training and wanting to forget about it. Now, he addressed the media and faced the music after the game, and you could tell there was a lot of emotion on his face, but I think he needs to just be able to take this head on at some point, because we haven't been able to talk to him this offseason. I think that would be beneficial for him moving forward, to completely bury it and then just move on with your career, because I think he does have a very bright future
Well, since
ahead.
all the brass of the Saints watch this show, they'll probably run it this weekend. They'll say, Marcus, get out there to the media and address it. I think
it would be a good thing,
will.
yeah.
By the way, I don't think you're just good luck in football, because is it any mistake or any coincidence that you came when the Pelicans came to the playoffs? I got to give you this beautiful Taz shirt. Once you put this shirt on, I'm going to tell you right now, when you open that bag and feel that softness.
Nice fabric. Ooh.
Bamboo fiber technology. I'm just saying that is not a gimmick. It is the real deal.
I dig it.
And here's a little gift certificate for you.
Thank you,
at
sir.
Shays de la Shays. That's an uptown restaurant right off of Carrollton Avenue, between Carrollton and Broadway, we like to say, on Maple Street. And let's find you a little spot right up in here.
Awesome.
Sign right under that little Super Bowl thing.
Of course, you got it.
And Andrew Doak, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming. Miles Brennan was supposed to be here, and you filled in for him. Miles promises me next week he's going to be here at LSU's QB. And we have some other surprises for you I think you're going to love on that show, by the way. Andrew Doak, very much thanks. Of course, Durand, Rudy Macklin, much love and many thanks for him as well. And, of course, Nick Underhill. Got to thank all these guys and everybody that works so hard right here at WLAE. Will Hill, Naila Jones, Anthony, the intern, and everybody else. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, and all those good folks, and everybody also at CST, Jeff Brenner, Ashley Coleman, all of them. We love you. We'll see you next week. Saints training camp starts this weekend. Back next week.
I think it's great.